In Lesson 311, we're going to learn about decimals for metric measurements. If you happen to have a meter stick at home, this would be a great opportunity to go and find it and use it today as we work. If you were at school, I would give you each a meter stick and longs and cubes to represent centimeters and so forth. But we'll do the best we can today. You will need your whiteboard marker, eraser, and your math journal to get started today. We're going to go ahead and write all of the factors for 12, 5, and 21. So go ahead and write these numbers on your whiteboard. I will do the first one for you. Typically when we write out factors, we've been writing them as factor pairs, similar to this. But I also want you to know that many times you might see them in a list. So let me just show you how I would do this. Rather than them writing them in pairs next to each other, in my head I would say, okay, 1 times 12. And I would just put them in order according to counting numbers. So 1 would come first, followed by 2, 3, and so forth. I know that 2 times 6 and 3 times 4. And then that would be it. So you might see them in lists like that as well. So would you go ahead and complete the factors for 5 and 21 and try to write them in a list like I have them? Go ahead and pause your video. All right, at this time you should have 2 factors for 5. This is called a prime number because it has exactly 2 factors. 1 and itself. 1 times 21 and 3 times 7. Those are all the factors for those numbers. I want you to think back to school when you had a desk that you would sit at during the day. And I want you to think about what your teacher's desk might have looked like. I want you to estimate your school desk. Is it more or less than a meter long? What about your teacher's desk? Here's some visuals to help you think about how long a meter is. Here's a visual. If you look at the back of this kitchen chair, it's like a high bar stool. So higher than a typical chair would be at a dining room table or a kitchen table. You can see the size of it in relation to that large dog. But here's another way to think about it. A meter is about the width of a doorway, or the width of a large fridge, or the height of your countertop, or 5 steps on a staircase, or the width of a dining room table, or about from your heel to an elbow on an adult, or tip to tip of your outstretched arms. Try that once. Take your left arm and your right arm and stretch them out as far away from each other as possible. That would be about the length of a meter, or the height of a 5-year-old. So estimate, is your desk at school more or less than a meter long? And how about the teacher's desk? Most likely I would say that your desk is probably less than a meter, but your teacher's is more. I want you to go ahead and number 1, 2, 3, and 4 on your whiteboard. I want you to answer these questions in regards to a meter stick. Go ahead and just write the answers to this. Think about back when we've been using base 10 blocks. How many centimeters or cubes are in 1 long? How many? What did you write? There are 10 cubes. Now, let me tell you, there are 100 centimeters in 1 meter. So see if you can answer this next question. How many longs would be in 1 meter? There would be 10 longs. What fraction of a meter is 1 long? Well, remember, what would I put as my denominator if I know this is how many longs it takes to cover the entire length of the meter, that becomes my denominator. And then if you have just one long, what would be my numerator? Go ahead and write it before I do. 1/10. And how would I write 1/10 as a decimal? Go ahead and write that for number 4. It would be 1/10. How many cubes would be needed to reach the 100-meter mark? There's 100 centimeters in 1 meter. And each of those cubes is a centimeter, so there would be 100 of them. How many centimeters are in 1 meter then, everyone? 100. Now, on your whiteboard, write what fraction of 1 meter is 1 centimeter. What fraction, if I just had 1 cube, go ahead and write the fraction that it would be for the entire length of the meter stick, which is 100 centimeters. 100 would be my denominator because it would take 100 cubes to be the entire length of a meter, and I have just 1. Now go ahead on your whiteboard and write that as a decimal. How do I write 1/100th? 0 longs and 1 cube. We're going to go ahead and move into our math journals, and I'm going to use a meter stick along with some base 10 blocks to help you understand how to write metric measurements with decimals. You're going to go ahead and open up your math journal to lesson 311, and we're on page 95. Page 95. So I've included a picture for the very first one. I tried to separate them a little bit so you could see where the longs and the cubes were, but I put 3 longs and 6 cubes down. It equals 36 centimeters, as you can see. It took me 3 longs and 6 cubes. And this picture here would show you 36 hundredths of a meter, 36 out of the 100 centimeters to cover the length of it. We're going to go ahead and continue with this. Now I have just 3 cubes down. What is the length in centimeters? It would be 3 centimeters if you look at the meter stick. I have 0 longs, I have 3 cubes, and this would be 3 hundredths of a meter. Remember, the first place after the decimal are the longs. Then the next one are cubes. So because I have no longs, I have to put a 0 in that place. Moving down, 8 centimeters. I put down enough centimeter cubes until it went to the 8. So now I need to fill in, how many longs do I have? 0. How many cubes? 8. And how would I write that in terms of length of an entire meter? Well, I have 0 longs and 8 cubes. We would say I have 8 hundredths of a meter. The next one says 3/10 of a meter. So I'm looking on the far right here. And remember, the first place after the decimal is the longs. So the first thing it tells me is that there's 3 longs. So in the picture you can see I put down 3 longs. It equals 30 centimeters. I use 3 longs and 0 cubes. Go ahead and fill this in your math journal. The next one tells me I have 4 longs and 3 cubes. So I went ahead and laid those down on my meter stick. Go ahead and look, what does it measure? It measures 43 centimeters, which is 4 longs and 3 cubes, and that would be 43 hundredths of a meter. And lastly, 168 centimeters. Well, the first thing I know is as soon as I have 100 centimeters, I already know that equals 1 meter. So now I'm just going to go ahead and put down the 68 because I know that 100 of those already equals a meter. All right, take a look at where those 68 ended up. I know it's a little hard to read with the sunshine coming in on my picture, but what that tells me is I had at least 10 longs to make the 1 meter plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more, and these are all cubes starting at the end here. So I have 16 longs, 10 plus 6 more, and then I have 8 cubes, which equals 1 whole meter plus 68 hundredths of the next one. Continuing on the page, it says work with a partner. Each partner uses base 10 blocks to make 1 length in each pair. So if you were at school, I'd have one of you make 9 hundredths and the other one make 12 hundredths, and then we would compare. But obviously, we can't do that, so I'm going to go ahead and tell you how to go about doing that. First thing we do is compare the 0 and the 0 the same. Then we have 1 and 2. Which one is larger? This one. This would be 9 cubes, and this one would be 1 long and 2 cubes. The next one, the 0 and the 0 are the same. 2 and 4, which is longer? 2 longs or 4 longs? 4 longs. So 24 hundredths is less than 42 hundredths. Next one, 0 and the 0 the same. 1 and 0, which one is larger? 0. So this would be 1 long and this would be 2 cubes. So 10 hundredths is greater than 2 hundredths. Next, 18 hundredths and 5 tenths. 0 and the 0 the same. 1 and 5. 5 longs is more than 1 long and 8 cubes. So even though 18 looks larger, because 18 is normally bigger than 5, but remember, you have to remember, this refers to longs, and this refers to cubes. So this is 1 long and 8 cubes, and this is 5 longs. Next one, 2 tenths and 8 hundredths. 0 and 0 are the same. 2 and 0. 2 is larger. This is 2 longs. This is just 8 cubes. Next, 0 and 0 are the same, so go to the next place value, tenths. 3 and 2. 3 is larger. This is 3 longs, and this is 2 longs and 4 cubes. And we'll end with that.